Hello everybody, it's Friday. Well, should be Friday by the time this is uploaded, but as of recording, well, technically it's Thursday, but never mind. Anyway, it's Friday, which means it is, technically speaking, time for a mailbox video, because I said I was going to do them. I wasn't lying, just didn't do one last Friday because I was too busy getting ready for the charity stream. So, anyway, oh yeah, and I didn't really... No one actually asked any bloody questions either. That was the other thing. I didn't actually have enough questions for me to go through and look for some interesting ones and answer them. So yeah, I don't know. I suspect what happened was that in the video that I actually announced I was going to be doing these mailbox videos, it was the 10,000 subscriber edition channel update, and I suspect what might have happened, judging by the comments on that video, is that loads of people turned up to that video, said congratulations on getting 10,000 subscribers, Jingles, and then didn't watch the rest of the video. So yeah, just a hunch that might be what happened. I could probably check the analytics myself and have a look at the average view time for that video, and I bet it'll be something like a minute or two. Anyway, because you know, it's ironic, really. Like any other week, like I'll get loads of questions on random videos, people asking me random questions which are totally unrelated to the videos, and then as soon as I put up a thing saying, hey, like, I'm doing a mailbox thing now, so you can ask your questions and I'll answer them there, nobody asks anything. Ugh, Sod's law in action. Anyway, never mind. So here we are. I've got a few questions. Well, some people did ask questions. Most of them were just Elder Scrolls questions. Elder Scrolls this, Elder Scrolls that. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? What is your favourite this? What is your favourite that in the Elder Scrolls? I've kind of chosen to skip most of them because, well, for two reasons. One, I've answered most of them already in my old Q&A videos, so, you know, go and watch those if you've got a lot of Elder Scrolls related questions, like what is your favourite race and stuff like that. And also, sometimes I honestly get a bit sick and tired of Elder Scrolls stuff. I'm aware it's incredibly popular on my channel at the minute. It's Skyrim and Oblivion and so on and so forth. But it is just one tiny, like, slice of all of my gaming diet, if you like. You know, I play Elder Scrolls games, I enjoy Elder Scrolls games, but they're not my life, you know. It's I have more things on my plate that I'm interested in than just Elder Scrolls games. You know, they're good games, but they're not that great that I can just devote my entire existence to them. So however, I decided there was one question I was going to answer because it comes up so often. And it will still come up really, really often, even after I've answered it here. But maybe by answering it here, it'll save me having to deal with it a bit later along the line for at least a little while. And that question is, and this doesn't come from anyone in particular, just because it's been asked so many times in stream chats, on random videos, on my channel page, everywhere. People just constantly ask me, what do you think of the Elder Scrolls Online? Right, well, okay. Well, to start off with, my opinion on the Elder Scrolls Online is ultimately irrelevant because I don't think I'll be playing it. Why won't I be playing it? Because they've gone for the subscription model, which I hate. Wouldn't say with a passion, but I just dislike it intensely. They're asking, you know, it's a $60 game with a $15 a month subscription fee, and no, sorry, I'm a bloody student. I can't afford $60 up front and $15 every single month for the sake of a game which I probably won't play that regularly. I don't play any game that regularly. Most games I will play for maybe like a month at tops, then I'll leave it and it'll get shelved for another year, and then I'll come back to it again later. Same with MMOs. When it comes to MMOs, the only games I really like to play are, well, not MMORPGs for a start. Things that you feel like you have to get your money's worth out of, like anything like World of Warcraft. No thanks, won't touch it with a barge pole. I like my MMOs to be, you know, well, firstly, free to play, hopefully. Better than that, something like Guild Wars 2, where you just pay for the box copy and that's it. totally cool with that. That's a great way of doing things, because that's just like any other game, you know. So, but you know, like if I'm gonna play an MMO, I'd prefer it to be free to play, and I prefer it to be something like World of Tanks or War Thunder, or even PlanetSide 2, something like that. I'm just not into MMORPGs at all. It's got to be something that isn't. If I'm gonna have to suffer having other human players in the game world with me, I want to at least be able to blow them up, which is something World of Tanks and War Thunder offer to me in a plenty. They really do. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I get enjoyment out of War Thunder, is because I can fly around and blow up noobs in their Yak 9Ts with my Messerschmitts, my Spitfires, and it's jolly good fun because it's fucking stress relieving, is what it is. Sure, there are idiots in that game. There are idiots in every online game, but at least in that game, I get to shoot all the idiots down. So there you go. Unless they're on my team, of course. There's that, I suppose. So yeah, MMORPGs, not really. I dabbled in Guild Wars 2 for a while, just because a couple of my friends had it, and it was fun for a while, but it got a bit dull after a while, and we eventually stopped playing it, and yeah, that's probably the only MMORPG I got any legitimate fun out of. And that was only because I was playing it with other people, you know, on Skype. You know, I couldn't play that bloody thing by myself. No way, not a chance in hell. But I can play World of Tanks or War Thunder by myself, no problem. More fun to play it with people, but totally play it by yourself, no big deal at all. So there you go. That's mainly why I'm not going to be buying the Elder Scrolls Online, because of that. I just don't enjoy MMORPGs, and also this bloody subscription model. The reason I like free-to-play games like World of Tanks and War Thunder is that, you know, I do spend money on those. They are free-to-play, but I do spend money on them. But the thing is, I'm choosing to spend money on them. I am choosing to make that extra investment and, you know, reward the company that have made this for their efforts, because I enjoy their game and I want to get a bit more enjoyment out of it myself. You know, I'm making that conscious decision to say, look, here, I like your game, have some money. Whereas when you've got to pay a monthly subscription fee, it's like, oh, right, okay. Oh, yeah, I have that game installed still, so I better give you £15 of my hard-earned cash every month, I suppose, because reasons, because you guys feel like you deserve it, even though, honestly, I don't know about that myself, but I don't know, here, take my money, I guess. So no, I don't like that at all. But as what I think of it, well, my opinion about it's gone up and down a bit. To begin with, I was like, oh, for heaven's sake, really? You're making an Elder Scrolls MMO? For Christ's sake, god damn it, really? You have to do this? Then it kind of went to cautiously optimistic, like, oh, I don't know, maybe it could be good. I saw some gameplay videos, I saw some, you know, stuff like that. Thought, oh, maybe, I don't know, it could be okay. And then they kind of announced the subscription model, and then I started to look at the game a bit more critically as a result of that, instead of just being blindly optimistic. And then I kind of realized, oh dear. Like, you see, my main problem with the Elder Scrolls Online is that, well, first of all, it's not being developed by Bethesda. Bethesda are, for many reasons, which I can't be bothered to list here right now, are the only company, other than maybe Obsidian, because they've shown they can actually do, you know, an Elder Scrolls style game at least, very, very competently. But Bethesda are really the only company that I honestly trust with the Elder Scrolls universe, because they're the guys who have been making the Elder Scrolls games for years. Those guys know all the lore, they know how the world works, they know the strengths and weaknesses and what the players like, what the fans like, what the fans don't like, more importantly. And they've got a good track record as far as designing it goes, and generally creating a world that feels very unique and sort of, well, you wouldn't think so, judging by the last two games they put out, to be honest, but if you go back to something like Morrowind, they're good at making a world that's just so unique compared to other fantasy RPGs out there. And my main concern is that ZeniMax online studios, or whatever the hell they're called, just don't have that talent. main issue came up when someone actually pointed this out to me. I mean, this is no original thought of mine. This is something I kind of picked up from someone else and ran with it. But someone, did a comparison between some old concept art, I think, of the High Elves in the Somerset Isle, and the concept art that was being used on promotional shit and all that sort of thing for the Elder Scrolls Online of the Isle of Mary Dominion. And the contrast was pretty stark. Like, this old bit of concept art, it was... I don't have it, so I can't show you it, I'm afraid, but it was of these high elf... I don't know what they were, honestly. They're priests, noblemen, something like that. Someone very important, anyway. In these big flowing robes and sort of tall hats and stuff like that. They looked very kind of... It was weird. It was like almost like a cross between like a Roman Catholic cardinal and, I don't know, just some sort of Oriental, sort of Japanese sort of nobleman with like all the big flamboyant clothing and stuff like that, like almost like a Chinese emperor. It looked absolutely bizarre and fantastic because it was bizarre. It was bizarre in the same way Morrowind was, just with a slightly different aesthetic because it wasn't all dark elfy. And it was really great. It was really, again, it reinforced that whole thing of elves are really weird in the Elder Scrolls. Like, they're just bizarre. They're very alien. They have a completely different society. Even everything down to their clothes and their books and their food and their buildings. Everything is just totally different from all the human stuff. But then you look at the promotional guff that they put out for the Elder Scrolls Online. When you look at stuff like the Aldmeri Dominion sort of thing, and it just looks like your standard rubbish Tolkien rip-off elves stuff. The armor, it looks like you could take some of those pictures without saying that they were from the Elder Scrolls Online, and you could put them in front of someone and say, what game is this from? And they wouldn't be able to tell you because they look so bloody generic and boring. You'd first guess probably go to something like Lord of the Rings Online, because that's kind of what it looks like. It's so dull and rubbish, and I'm beginning to wonder if that's kind of like a sneak peek, if you like, of one of the underlying problems I'm probably going to end up having with Elder Scrolls Online, is that the world design is going to be crap. It's going to be really naff by the looks of things, judging by the concept art and even some of the gameplay trailers and stuff we've seen. The world design, specifically, is what I'm bothered here by, is the world design for the provinces we've not yet seen in Elder Scrolls games. Stuff like Cyrodiil, Skyrim, Morrowind, that all kind of probably looks quite good because the team making it are basically just phoning it in and basing it all off what's been in the previous Elder Scrolls games. Vvardenfell is still going to look roughly like Vvardenfell because, well, all they have to do is copy it over from Morrowind, roughly. Same with Skyrim, same with Oblivion. Cyrodiil. Anyway, but I'm thinking, specifically in this case, I'm looking at, say, the Somerset Isles, or Black Marsh, or elsewhere, or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, is this going to be really crap? Like, is this going to be like just really rubbish, standard MMO world design, which is just full of, like, it'll suffer from what I've seen people call MMO gigantism, where all the environments are like really, really big for some reason. Like Guild Wars 2 was a prime example of that, where everything, everywhere you went, was just bloody gigantic, like slightly absurdly big. I'm thinking, for example, of the main settlement for the Norn, I think they're called. The big sort of Norse giant people, and they have that massive lodge or whatever, and the doors are the size of skyscrapers. The front doors are literally the size of skyscrapers. They're gigantic. And it's all utterly ridiculously big, and it kind of worked just because that game had a slightly almost cartoony aesthetic in many ways. But in the Elder Scrolls, no. The Elder Scrolls has never had a kind of over-exaggerated cartoony aesthetic at all. But some of the environments, judging by the videos we've seen, look just like that, really. The dungeons as well, they're going to be, they look really big. Like every single room in it, all the dungeons is really big because it's got to accommodate loads and loads of players running around and stuff like that. Whereas some of the best dungeons in Elder Scrolls games have been the really tight, claustrophobic ones with passages barely wide enough for a single man to get through. Think of some of the caves in Skyrim with the little passageways and stuff like that. You know, in most of the dungeons in Skyrim or Oblivion or wherever, big rooms like the ones in the Elder Scrolls Online are quite rare. They'll usually be like a final boss room that's like that, or some main hub area, which will have lots of little passages leading off from it, you know, which makes sense, because architecturally that's, well, you know, that's just sensible. But in Elder Scrolls Online, every bloody room in the dungeon is like that, because it has to accommodate loads and loads of players, and that, again, that just really annoys me. And, you know, if it weren't for the fact that normally this wouldn't bother me, I would treat it the way I've treated, you know, other games like this, like, oh, well, just treat it as a spin-off, like Redguard or something like that. It's not really that important. Just sit around and wait for Elder Scrolls 6 to come out, it'll all be fine, except, and here's the big problem, ZeniMax are designing all these provinces we've not seen before and potentially cocking them up horribly. And yeah, that's a bit of a shame, but never mind, who cares really, let's just wait for Elder Scrolls 6. But, hang on a second, what if Elder Scrolls 6, and it will be probably, in fact, Elder Scrolls 6 will be set in one of these provinces, and since Bethesda have a bit of a track record of sticking to their guns as far as previous established lore is concerned, even to the point of absurdity, I can imagine them making a game set in the Somerset Isles, and then they basically just end up being forced to use all the assets and base designs and layout of the land and stuff like that ZeniMax blokes came up with. Because otherwise, how on earth would you justify the entire province looking completely different from the way it did in ESO, in TES 6? Which means, basically by extension, that because the Elder Scrolls Online is designing all the provinces we've not seen so far, because it's all of Tamriel after all, does this now mean that we're going to end up saddled with their designs for every future Elder Scrolls game pretty much going forward now? Because that's just what those provinces look like now in canon, in lore, you know, we're basically stuck with them as ZeniMax designed them. That worries me a lot, really. And I have to wonder what else kind of stuff they're going to muck about with. Like, you know, every big MMORPG out there has to have this almost mandatory, like, Asian-themed expansion. Like, the original Guild Wars had one. It had this expansion pack with this sort of Asian-Chinese theme. World of Warcraft obviously has that Mists of Pandaria thing. I assume that's what it's called. I've never played it, but yeah, like with the pandas and it's all oriental and that kind of guff. You just know that one of the future expansions for the Elder Scrolls Online is going to be Akavir. It is, and they are going to just milk it and make it into one of those generic Asian-themed expansions when, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Akavir should ever be touched in the Elder Scrolls. It needs to remain that kind of weird, bizarro, mysterious land that nobody knows anything concrete about whatsoever. I know some of you will disagree, because I occasionally get comments posted on videos saying, oh, I wish the next Elder Scrolls game was set in Akavir. But, well, yeah, I wouldn't be entirely opposed to that, just as long as Bethesda are in charge of it and they did a good job on the world design, you know, and made it actually interesting, as opposed to just, oh, look, cheap fantasy Asian knockoff. Which is what ZeniMax will probably do, judging by their work so far, and that annoys me to no fucking end as well, so... Yeah, well... Okay, so yeah, why wouldn't I be buying Elder Scrolls Online? Subscription fee. To boil it down to two single words. Why don't I like Elder Scrolls Online? Because it has the potential to basically screw up the rest of the Elder Scrolls universe going forward, basically. It could make it, you know, what ZeniMax do and what they put out in the Elder Scrolls Online is going to shape what the rest of Tamriel looks like for the rest of the games going forward. And that I'm not happy with, frankly, because I'm not convinced ZeniMax have the chops to actually pull off interesting designs like Bethesda can. So there you go. That's what I think of the Elder Scrolls Online. Now you can all shut up and stop asking me. Oh man, people still will though. Don't you worry. This is YouTube after all. Anyway, okay, so that was the big thing I wanted to get out of the way. Like I said, no one specifically asked me that, because hundreds of people have asked me that. So anyway, moving on. Now I've got 2 more questions here. Again, yeah, just 2 questions. Sorry guys. Not only am I hand-picking responses here because I want to answer questions I'm vaguely interested in answering, but also, no, barely anyone asked any bloody questions, so there wasn't a lot to choose from. So, yeah, 2 more questions. Anyway, the first of which comes from 88 Boris via Twitter. And he asks, right, he says, are you still planning on doing Mailbox videos? Yup, as you can probably tell by watching this video. If so, my question is, what are your favourite historical airplanes? Okay, well, good question. Thank you for that. Thank you for asking me something that's not related to the freaking Elder Scrolls. I don't, just let me, clear the air on this a little bit. I don't mind asking Elder Scrolls questions, but as long as they're evenly balanced with everything else, Anyway, so, yeah, one of my favourite historical airplanes. Thank you for that question. I've seen a lot of historical airplanes. I've been to a lot of air shows, I've been to a lot of museums. And there's a lot of airplanes out there to love, honestly. Most of the airplanes I really like are from World War II, let's be honest. World War I aircraft, not really, it wasn't ever really my thing. I don't know much about them other than, hey, look, the Sopwith Camel, that was a good plane, right? And the SE-5, that's a very, actually quite a pretty looking plane for such an early, canvas biplane type jobby. The Fokkers as well, they're great. Albatrosses are pretty cool aircraft, but yeah, most of my favourite aircraft are World War II jobbies, like Spitfires. Oh god, what I would not give to sit in the cockpit of a Spitfire just once in my life. Oh, what an experience that would be, really. Jesus, I grew up from age like 6 onwards obsessed with Spitfires, and I haven't stopped being obsessed with Spitfires. Just beautiful aeroplanes. I remember seeing just in a comment on a video once, it was just a video, I think, of Spitfire fly past at an old air show which I'd been to. And the top comment on the video with like 160 upvotes was, God didn't know how to make the most beautiful aeroplane in the world, so he let the British do it. That's just like, round of applause. Yes. As far as I'm concerned, the Spitfire is the most beautiful plane in the world that has ever been created. I know plenty of people disagree with that because it's an entirely subjective thing, and I respect your opinion. However, you're wrong. The Spitfire is the most pretty aircraft that has ever been designed. I'm sorry, it just is. Oh. Anyway, yeah. Loads of other aircraft I love though. There's a lot of American aircraft which I quite like. I love some of the naval aircraft they had during the Second World War, like the chubby little Wildcats. They're quite charming in their own little way. Hellcats, SBDs, the Avengers, that sort of thing. A-26 Invaders, the Destroyers, even the later post-war stuff like the Sky Raider. I've seen a Sky Raider flying, no less. I even saw it take off. It's pretty cool. Big old airplanes those things are. Big chunky things that look like they could do a lot of damage. Yeah, so and I like quite a lot of Cold War aircraft as well, the later stuff, the jets and that sort of thing. Not so much into the fighter jets, really. I don't know a lot about fighter jets, I know, but there are a few. I think it was it the MiG-22, MiG-23? No, it was MiG-21, I think, maybe. One of the 3, anyway. There are loads of MiGs, but the one, basically, it was called the Foxhound, I think. Yeah, the MiG Foxhound. What a magnificent aircraft. It's a bit of a technological marvel. It was basically a plane designed by the Russians, which was able to fly in basically the upper atmosphere of our planet. And its job was to intercept supersonic NATO bombers and, actually, I think, if memory serves, I mean, don't quote me on it or anything, but I believe it was also one of its functions, and it was a manned aircraft, by the way, this. It wasn't like a drone or anything. It was a manned aircraft with a crew of, I think, 2 guys. It's a huge aircraft, by the way. It's like it looks like a fighter jet, but it's actually about the size of a bomber. It's insane. But it was supposed to actually fly in the upper atmosphere at supersonic speeds and shoot down incoming nuclear missiles. How awesome is that? Wow, you know? What a cool aircraft. I've never seen one of those in real life, though. I haven't seen a lot of Russian aircraft in real life, actually. You don't see them very much in museums and stuff here in Britain, really. You know, the Russians keep them all to themselves because, well, obviously a lot of these things are still in use, and, you know, the information about them is actually classified, so you don't often see them just sat around in museums for everyone to look at. I remember once I went to Bovington Tank Museum, and they had a Challenger 2 there. And at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, it might not be, but at the time, they had a Challenger 2 on display and everything, and every tank had a little plaque next to it, basically, explaining its dimensions, all the information about it, stuff like that. But when you got to the Challenger 2's plaque, its info thing, it was basically, it was all blanked out because it was classified. The Ministry of Defence was not allowed to divulge information to the public on the performance and the specifications of the Challenger 2 tank because it was still in use and still therefore classified. I think that's the case with a lot of Russian aircraft, so I haven't seen one of those. But as far as jet aircraft go, my favourite has got to be, hands down, without a single doubt in my mind, the Avro Vulcan. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to put a picture of this thing on the screen, actually. So you should be able to see it round about nowish. But the Avro Vulcan is a gigantic British supersonic bomber from the 1950s. It was called a V bomber. It was one of 3 different types of bomber that was developed, all whose code names began with V. This one was called the Vulcan. You also had the Victor and the what was the other one? Vulcan, Victor, and you know, I've forgotten. My brain's saying stuff like Vanguard, but I know it wasn't that. It was Handy Page, Victor, Avro Vulcan, and bloody hell, what was it? Vickers Valiant, that was it, right? Yeah, the Valiant, the Victor, and the Vulcan. And the Vulcan was it was the latest of the 3 bombers that was designed. And it's huge. It's gigantic. It's monolithic. It was basically designed to fly over Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union and drop nuclear bombs, basically. That was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It was obviously... these things got phased out of service as frontline nuclear deterrents when you know, people started coming up with submarine-launched ballistic missiles, which were much more useful because, you know, a submarine you can have floating off the coast of Russia for, you know, weeks on end waiting to launch its missiles, whereas an aircraft has to actually take off and fly to a target at a moment's notice. And obviously an aircraft can be bombed on the ground. You know, a nuclear bomb, if the Soviets launched a first strike, then if Britain's airfields got nuked, then, well, basically that's it. You know, those bombers aren't going anywhere. But a submarine, you can't just nuke a submarine because you don't know where the bloody things are most of the time. A submarine can just wait submerged for weeks on end off the coast of, Russia, off in the Arctic Circle, and then it can launch its missiles when it gets the word from HQ in Britain. So obviously the V bombers, you know, the nuclear bombers, they basically just got ditched in favour of submarines eventually. But by the way, watch this shot here. Isn't it brilliant? One bullet, he's dead, and I got the kill, and all those other people were left there, flying around very angrily because they didn't get it after all that effort. Oh dear, such a troll. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, the Vulcan bombers. They carried on being used mainly as reconnaissance, low-level bombers, and as refueling tankers. The last time an Avro Vulcan was actually used in a war, for example, was when it was used as a refueling aircraft, you know, mid-air refueling aircraft during the Falklands War. It refueled aircraft on their way to the Falkland Islands when Argentina invaded them. And that's what its job was. The Vulcan's been retired now. It's not in service anymore. There's only one still flying. Didn't used to be, but it got restored after a huge charity drive. And I have seen it flying. These things. I've said they're big, but when you actually see them, they just beg a belief. You look at it and you think, how on earth is that thing staying in the air? It's gigantic. You know, these things have a wingspan that you could easily fit like two or three houses underneath. They're gigantic. They're huge. At Duxford, they have one in their main hangar, in Hangar 1. If you go to Duxford, they have one in there, and it takes you like almost a minute probably to walk from one wingtip to the other wingtip, because you can walk around underneath it and you can have a look at the bomb bay, which is just gigantic. You could fit a school bus in that bomb bay. God, what brilliant planes. They're really loud as well. Goodness me, like one flew over it during I think it was the Cottesmore air show I went to, RAF Cottesmore. And they had one flying over there, and unbelievably loud. You have no idea. I've never seen one taking off, and I'm told it's a sight to see and something to really hear as well. A Vulcan taking off. Friend of mine, he went to an air show where one of these Vulcans was taking off, and he popped back to the car park, I think, to get something from his car, and that was when the Vulcan was taking off, and the Vulcan's engines went up full throttle, ready to go taking off down the runway, and the noise was so loud that it set like half the car alarms in the car park off, even though it was on the runway like a fair distance away from the car park. It set half the car alarms off just because the sheer vibration in the air caused by the sound of these massive engines was causing the car alarms to go off, like they do during when you get one of those little tremors or earthquakey type things that we get in England from time to time. We get very minuscule earthquakes in England, if you didn't know, from time to time, and they set car alarms off, and it was just like that. Immense. What an amazing aircraft. Yeah. So yeah. Woo. Spitfires and Vulcans, goodness me. If I could ever get in the cockpit of either of those planes, I'd be a very happy bunny. I'd be a very happy Jingles. Anyway, so, thank you for that question, Boris. Most appreciated. Got a chance to prattle on about aeroplanes for a little while. Always love to do that, every chance I get. Anyway, so, the last question. Who does this come from? I've not got their name written down. No! Let me just click through my Twitter here and see if I can find it. George Moran, basically. Okay, right. George Moran asks, and yeah, this is another Elder Scrolls related question, but it's not to do with the games per se, so I decided, fuck it, why not? George Moran asks, what is your view on Greg Key's Infernal City and Lord of Souls? For those who don't know, those are these two standalone books written by Greg Keyes, basically paid to do it by Bethesda, and they are set in Tamriel in the Elder Scrolls universe. I think Lord of Souls is a sequel to the Infernal City. It's like a two-part thing. And the answer is I don't really know, because I haven't read them. Well, that's not entirely true, actually. I've read the first chapter of the Infernal City, and I haven't read any more of it than that, so I can't give you a proper opinion on them as books, I suppose. I wasn't majorly impressed when I read the first chapter of the Infernal City. It's no Song of Ice and Fire, obviously. It's not. It's kind of the. It was like reading an in-game book from one of the Elder Scrolls games. That's really all it was like, just reading one of those in-game books you get, except it was a real book and you had to pay money to actually read the thing. So, okay, I guess. Wasn't obviously terrible in any way I could tell, but there you go. But the Infernal City caused a bit of a stir in the Elder Scrolls community. And is a bit of a controversial. I hesitate to use the word controversial, because that should really only be applied to things that are actually in some way vaguely serious. But whatever, amongst the Elder Scrolls community, those books are a bit controversial because in the Infernal City, basically, for those of you who've played Skyrim, maybe haven't read this book, and you know about, say, the Red Year, where Vardenfell exploded and a volcano erupted, destroyed the entire place, killed half of Morrowind, then the Argonians invade and take over half of Morrowind, so on and so on, so on and so on. That was not Bethesda didn't come up with that. That was from the Infernal City, Greg Key's book. And that didn't. The thing that irked a lot of people, including myself at the time, is that this didn't happen actually in the book. It was just kind of mentioned as a thing that had happened in between the end of Oblivion and the start of this book, which took place some years afterwards. It kind of gets offhandedly mentioned because they basically, the characters at one point in their visit, basically the crater that once used to be Vivek City, and this guy explains, oh well, yeah, this happened and that happened and stuff like that, and then they just get on with the rest of the story. And you know, for a lot of people at that point, it was just like, wait, what did you, what? No, rewind here, go back a second. What the hell? Greg Keys, did you just destroy all of Vardenfell and Morrowind? Did you just destroy the one province in Tamriel that was actually in some way unique and, you know, really, really cool and probably the highlight of the entire series? You just wiped it all out with a nuclear explosion, basically. You dropped a nuke on it. Did you seriously? You did do it. You did do it, didn't you? You bastard. You utter bastard. That was, you know, so many words. That was kind of my initial response to it, I'm afraid. You know, it was kind of, well, yeah. It was like learning that a town you'd grown up in for half your childhood had just been blown up in a war somewhere. And yeah, it's a bit depressing, really. You know, spent thousands of hours wandering around Vardenfell. You know, doing all the little quests there, talking to all the little people there. Spent a long time playing that game, mainly because, well, you know, back then that was one of the few games I actually had to play. So obviously I spent long tracts of time sort of sat there in that little virtual world, you know, enjoying all that I had to offer, reading all the books, learning all the lore, you know, doing the main quest umpteen times, saving the world, saving Vardenfell umpteen times, and then just to have it all destroyed and blown up, kind of feels like, well, that kind of sucks. That was a bit of a cheap way to end it, wasn't it, really? You know? Kind of, you know, the initial reaction was kind of something along the lines, well, you know, why the hell did I spend thousands of hours doing the main quest and saving the bloody place if it was just going to explode 100 years later anyway? What was the bloody point? You know, I feel like all my effort I put into playing that game has been kind of wasted, really, because in the long run, it doesn't matter. It all explodes. You know, just bit disheartening, really, and that's I've never really been able to quite shake that off. As far as those books are concerned, it's always kind of coloured my opinion of them a bit. Because, yeah, I still think that was a bit of a cheap way to just write off a whole a whole section of Elder Scrolls lore, which up to that point had been kind of the real standout star, you know, bit of Bethesda's design. I've often said Morrowind, thanks to its design and the way its world was designed and stuff like that, and its narrative and its plot and, you know, its characters and stuff like that, easily stands up with games like Planescape Torment. You know, it goes beyond being simply a fun video game and becomes something that's a bit more like something we as gamers can point to when you're looking at the history and the development of video games and saying, you know, that's a bit of a landmark title, is that? And, you know, they basically just destroyed it all for the sake of this book. You know, they shoved it into the hands of a writer who had previously had nothing to do with the Elder Scrolls, you know, and said, yep, here, go nuts. And he decided, you know, I think I'll blow up Morrowind. I think that'd be a good idea. I'll blow it up. Without possibly thinking about, you know, how this kind of all fits together. It's not like dealing with a film universe where, you know, like Star Trek or something, where you can where they, like in the new Star Trek films, don't they blow up Vulcan or something? And, you know, obviously that annoyed plenty of people, but at the end of the day, you know, who really cares? You know, it's a planet in the Star Trek universe, a fairly important one, but how attached to it can you really be? You know, it's just part of the lore. But Morrowind, you know, and Vardenfell wasn't just part of the lore. It was a place where players had spent thousands of hours inhabiting, for want of a better word. And they just kind of did away with it in the space of about 2 sentences. Really kind of sad, I guess. And like I said, yeah, a bit of a cheap way to write off a part of the Elder Scrolls universe, which was probably the best designed part of the Elder Scrolls universe. You know, you take Morrowind away from Tamriel, and you don't have that much. The whole Elder Scrolls universe instantly becomes a lot less interesting. So there you go. It's all silly, really. It's all fictional guff. It doesn't affect anyone. It's nonsense. It's a bloody fictional universe, and at the end of the day, who really cares? It doesn't bother me that much. You'd think the way I'm whinging about it right now, I'm slightly a little too over-invested in it, but really, no, I'm not. I just... You know, it got me annoyed for about the course of a week at most, and then after that I was just like, oh well, never mind, deal with it. That's what Bethesda decided to do. They said okay to the book, they obviously read it and thought, that's fine, and let's just live with it and get on, and show me some new goddamn provinces. I want to see Skyrim, I want to see the Somerset Isle, all that kind of stuff. You know, we already knew that Bethesda weren't going to do another proper Elder Scrolls game set in Morrowind anyway, so what the bloody hell does it matter, you know? If you want to see more of Morrowind, then go play Tamriel Rebuilt, you know, the mod for Morrowind, which is very, very good, and you should all play. So yeah, you know, who really gives a damn at the end of the day? So yeah, as far as the books themselves are concerned, I can't really comment. Like I said, I've only read 1 chapter, and the bit I just mentioned about him mentioning how Vardenfell got destroyed, I read that bit as well. I kind of instantly flicked through and found that bit and read it and was like, ugh. So yeah, I just as books, I don't know. I don't know anything about them. I haven't read enough of them to form an opinion, I'm afraid. So there you go. Whew. Right, that was all of today's questions. I probably spent way too long answering them. But that's just the way I do things. This is why I'm only answering like a few questions a week that I've handpicked, as opposed to just every question everyone asked me. Words jingles, get them the right way round. So yeah, that was the first episode of the Mailbox. Hope you enjoyed it, I guess. Hearing me ramble incoherently for anything up to an hour. Who knows how long this has been. Remember to post your questions for future episodes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and do this every Friday. Because of how long it takes me to upload videos, who freaking knows when it's going to be, you know, uploaded. But generally, I will try and do it around Friday-ish. So yeah, I will endeavour to get it out every Friday, once a week, basically. So yeah, and if you've got questions for future episodes, pop them in the comments below, or ask me them over Twitter, and, you know, if you ask me some good questions, then I may well answer them. So, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good week, have a good weekend, and I'll see you again pretty darn soon.